Hello there, Senators. Welcome back to another show here on Star Wars Democracy. Thank you all for being here. Man, was that a good Ahsoka episode. A good 2 Ahsoka episodes. So excited to be talking with you all about Ahsoka today. There's a lot to break down, a lot to discuss, a lot of things that I really did like, a lot of things that, it was okay. I will say there's not a lot that I did not like, so that's a good thing. And I'll be sure as we kind of break down episodes 1 and then into episodes 2, I'll give you my rating if you don't follow me on Twitter, which if you don't follow me on Twitter or X, whatever we call it now, make sure you follow me on Twitter at SW Democracy. It's in the handle as my name here on the stream as well. So looks like we got Senator SB in the chat. SB, thank you for being here. Can't wait to talk about Ahsoka with you. Always love to hear your opinion on things. So thank you for being here. Let's get right into it. So, I mean, as people trickle in, I'm sure people will let us know how we felt. But SB, I know you're in the chat. Go ahead and tell me how you felt about both of these episodes. And let's just honestly, let's just get right into it. So that opening scene, which first of all, by the way, before we get too bogged down in the details, I called it. I know I wasn't the only one out there who called it, but I definitely called it. That opening scene with Baylan, Shin, and the New Republic's ship was absolutely fantastic. It's exactly what I thought we needed for the show, and it's exactly what happened. I mean, I saw some people talking about this online today, but the captain was fantastic in that sequence. Really, like, did not expect those Baylan and Shin to be Jedi, and they weren't Jedi, as we found out. But it was just a fantastic sequence between the captain and Baylan and Shin, which a lot of people online are really liking the character Shin. I thought the character Shin was also fantastic. Was really compelling. Really, there was no doubt in my mind that Shin definitely was evil. Baylan, on the other hand, was kind of giving some interesting impressions. We even see it right off the bat, right? Like, he doesn't necessarily want to kill all these people. My question to him was going to be, how did you think that you were going to show up on that New Republic ship and just did you think that they were just going to let you take Morgan? Like, obviously you knew that you were going to have to shed some blood, but I mean, what I think was so interesting is kind of like the nobleness there. Like, he really wasn't going to kill them, it would seem, until they realized that there was going to be no way around it. And so really, and I see SB says it right here, Baylan and Shin are the best part of the show, in my opinion. I would agree, SB. They were really fantastic. But to be honest with you, I also found Morgan Elsbeth to be very compelling. In fact, I found Morgan to be so compelling that it kind of confused me. It almost didn't seem like the character from The Mandalorian season 2. Like, yeah, we have the story is not to say that there's no continuity in the story, but like, that actress, I can't remember her name, is very compelling as Morgan Elsbeth. SB says it here. Yes, she's actually a great character, fantastic character. And what I really found interesting, I'm already jumping ahead. I knew this was going to happen, but what I really found interesting here is she's really what's kind of driving the plot forward here. We thought that Baylan and Shin were kind of going to be, at least I thought that Baylan and Shin were going to be kind of the main villains. But Morgan Elsbeth is kind of driving the plot forward. She's the one who's revealing all these new things to us and telling us where Thrawn is. Thrawn is banished. She used words like banished, exiled, which is telling us a lot, right? Because now we know. We thought that maybe Thrawn was kind of making the jumps between this, I guess, Peridia is what we're calling it. Peridia and this faraway, unknown, the new beyond, and possibly coming into the known galaxy. But now we know, after the words like banished and exiled, he really has no way back to the known galaxy, besides whispers of his return, which is really cool. And we're learning all this from Elsbeth. SB says, And now that she's a Night Sister, there's a new aspect to her. Yeah, well, she was always a Night Sister, right? But now that we know that she's a Night Sister, it definitely adds a level of um, she's very intriguing as a character. And like I said, just to be able to her to be the character that we learn so much from is really making her an important character to the story. I'm going to jump back up here. SB says, I thought they were very good, talking about the episodes here. Not perfect, but I am dumbfounded by so many people hating on the show. There are people, and I don't know what other creators you watch, SB, or who you follow on social media. To be honest with you, I've actually been kind of shocked at the number of people who haven't been hating on the show, at least from what I've seen. There are definitely people out there who are not happy with it, but honestly, I kind of try to stay away from them a little bit. But everybody that I've seen has thought that it's kind of like what you're saying here. It is good, but it's not necessarily the show that's going to save Star Wars yet. And that's okay. We only gotten 2 episodes. My question is, what I thought was really interesting, guys, is we were told that out of episodes 1 and 2, episode 1 was the slower paced one, and episode 2 was the faster paced one. Which I found really interesting because I think what they're trying to say there is episode 2 is better than episode 1. They said episode 2 is kind of where things get going, and that's true. That's where we learn about the path to Peridia, the Eye of Sion, the planet Theatos, which is where I guess the ancient beings built this not necessarily a temple, but where this path, it looks like the path takes you from this planet Cetos to the new beyond Peridia. Um, you know, it's just all pretty interesting. All really interesting, and I don't know. I'm just excited. I am excited about it. Let's see here. As far as creators go, I checked out about 10 today, including you, and I'd say about 40% liked it. Okay, interesting. Don't know who those creators are, obviously, but it's kind of sad that they didn't. But again, it's not the show that's going to save Star Wars. But sequences. So again, I called it. I called it the very first sequence. We definitely saw Balin and Shin board that New Republic ship and break out Morgan Elsbeth from New Republic custody. And it's just fantastic. One thing I noticed some people talking about is the irony, right, behind the fact that like the New Republic is kind of cocky. You hear it from the officer, who's, again, is pretty convinced that these are not Jedi. And they're not Jedi, obviously. But is pretty like is not concerned about it at all. And they're learning their lesson right from the beginning, I think, of you may have defeated the Empire, but you have to make sure that like you have to stay vigilant. And again, it shows right there, like this Captain Hale, I believe was his name, didn't assume that these people were a threat at all. But you got to stay vigilant. Just because you defeated the Empire doesn't mean that there's people still out there who aren't ready to come back and take their stake as the new Empire. So I don't know, really fascinating, kind of like the idea that the New Republic isn't really on guard at all is kind of fascinating. And there's just something brewing out there in the unknown regions in Peridia, apparently. So SB says, question for you, Star Wars Democracy. Is this series real Star Wars? Interesting. Real Star Wars in quotes. So I would say for me, this is probably the most Star Wars-y thing that I have seen in a while. I would say so far, and this is a little bit controversial. I feel like the best piece of Star Wars in terms of live action content that we've gotten in a long time is The Mandalorian season 2. And so far, I would say that I feel like this is more Star Wars than The Mandalorian season 2. Of course, yeah, did we get a lot of great cameos in The Mandalorian season 2, including Ahsoka? Sure. Um, but really Star Wars for me, or at least what I've been the most interested about, like in Star Wars about lately, is the Force. I really want to learn more about the Force. And I'm not saying that Star Wars has to be lightsabers and all about the Force. However, I do think that to some extent the Force does need to be central in Star Wars, just because I think it has to be mystical. I think the mythology, the mystery, regarding the Force is what makes Star Wars to me. So, in my opinion, SB, this is real Star Wars, but that's not to say that other Star Wars isn't real either. This is just what felt the most real to me, and I've liked the most thus far. And we're only 2 episodes in, which I think is awesome. Tony, glad to see you, Tony. Thank you for being here. Tony says, SB, I agree with your comment above. So, I'm glad to have you both here. Thank you for being a part of the stream. We're just going through and just talking about the episode. SB says, I agree with you, Star Wars Democracy. This show is the most like real Star Wars since Clone Wars, which is why I'm actually a bit impressed that the reaction from so many has been what it was. So let me ask you, SB, and everybody else in the chat, what was your score out of 10? What was your score out of 10? And I'll let you know my score here in a little bit. And Tony, glad you're here, Tony. I haven't heard from you. I'm curious to see what your thoughts on Ahsoka were. I'm pretty sure you were going to like it. And you're all probably wondering, based off the thumbnail, we have to talk about it. Teasing it out a little bit, but was that the Rebel scene? I feel like, Tony, you're probably going to say that was the Rebel scene. SB, I don't know what your opinion is on it. Everybody else in the chat can let me know as well. But I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what I think, if that's the Rebels scene or not. The Rebels epilogue scene. SB gave it a 8.5. I would assume that's a combined total for both episodes 1 and 2. And then Tony gave it an 8. Wow, Tony, I was actually expecting it to be a little bit higher. But that's okay. That's okay. Appreciate your honest opinion. Okay, we're going back to the New Republic ship. So awesome. I predicted it. I'm a genius. I figured that would be the best way to introduce these new villains, while also kind of set the stage for how big of a threat this actually is. So I called it. Baylan and Shin approach the New Republic ship and break Elsbeth out. Now, from there, it's really Elsbeth is like, or more, Baylan's like, who is this Jedi? Ahsoka Tano. Then you cut to it. Did not expect that we were going to get that temple scene where Ahsoka first shows up right off the bat, and after the New Republic heist. Did not think we were going to get that in this first episode. Fantastic. I speculated that it was going to be a Jedi temple. It makes more sense now that it would be like a Night Sister temple, which is really cool. It's been a while since I've seen the Indiana Jones movies, but it felt very Indiana Jones to me. Ahsoka coming in, like moving around, like you could tell that she was in tune with the Force. Not necessarily using the Force to move those pillars around, but was definitely like kind of in tune with the Force and like knowing what to do there. Kind of Indiana Jones, like even like National Treasure kind of vibes, which I thought was really cool. There wasn't very much sophistication that had to go on to get to that point, but nonetheless, it felt like National Treasure to me. And then she gets the map, comes out. There's the robot. I believe it was Star Wars Meg today. It was like the robot was like the map or something like that, and it sounded very much like Kylo Ren in The Force Awakens, which is kind of a cool callback. I totally think that Dave is such a genius, and it's kind of like the whole it's poetry, it rhymes thing for Star Wars. Like he probably did think about that and tried to make the robot sound like that. So definitely think that was really cool. That fight sequence was awesome. it was just really cool. I was still at that point thinking that it was a Jedi temple. Honestly, I wasn't catching on to the fact that maybe that was the Night Sisters. But it makes sense. So that was something I was wrong about. I did think it was going to be a Jedi temple. Turns out it was the Night Sisters of Dathomir. And honestly, I mean, I had known that Morgan Elsbeth was rumored to be a Night Sister. It makes total sense now. She mentions something. I don't know how you all probably got this. I didn't catch this. In The Mandalorian season 2, she mentions something like, or Ahsoka mentions that like Elsbeth's people were slaughtered in the Clone Wars or something. I'm just like, okay, there you go, right there. It. How did we not know that she was a Night Sister? Honestly, so fun stuff for sure. So Ahsoka defeats those robots, and then from there we go and we meet Hera. Well, let me catch up on some of these chats real quick. Let's see. SB says, I think it was the rebel scene, and I'm not sure why so many people are hating on the fact that Ahsoka wasn't Ahsoka the White. Let me read that again. And I'm not sure why so many people are hating on the fact that Ahsoka wasn't Ahsoka the White. Well, as someone, and maybe Tony would agree with me here, as someone who would have really liked to see Ahsoka the White in the epilogue scene, I certainly would be disappointed if that wasn't Ahsoka the White. But again, I'll let you know my thoughts in a second. There's definitely mixed opinions out there for sure. Tony says it might take some time getting used to seeing Sabine and Hera as live action characters. The same was true for Ahsoka's initial introduction. Yes. I know there's a lot of comments in the chat, but do you all think, was it harder for you to get over Hera or Sabine? Because I definitely see what you're saying here, Tony. Like, for me, yes, the continuity is there between Rebels and this show, but it was a little hard for me to get over the live action appearance. I personally would say that Sabine's appearance was harder to get over than Hera's. Hera's like has definitely improved. It looks like they have definitely made some improvements from some of the original trailers that we saw, teaser trailers and things like that. But Sabine's appearance, and I don't think it was just the long hair. I think just in general, Sabine's appearance just was kind of throwing me off a little bit. But I think that's because there's definitely like a story there, and we'll kind of get into that in a second. So Tony says, after Ezra left, Sabine was not doing well and was understandably upset to be back in his old home. Hera knew that giving Sabine something to do, like solving a puzzle, would help her. True. Yeah, we'll get into the Sabine and Ahsoka stuff in a little bit for sure. We don't have much information about what happened between Sabine and Ahsoka over the last 5 to 7 years, or why they parted ways. Sure. So, okay, we can kind of jump ahead. Well, Hera and Ahsoka meet. What I found really interesting was, and I don't think that this is something that necessarily is what people, I mean, suppose people could be expecting this, but Hera was definitely under the impression that Grand Admiral Thrawn died. And given that Thrawn died, Ezra would have died as well. She was very much assuming that that's what happened. I never got that impression, because at the end of Star Wars Rebels, like, Hera is ready to go, right? Like, she is ready to go find Ezra. Until Ezra's hologram comes up and he's like, I had to do this. May the Force be with you. So, I thought it was really interesting that Hera I guess she had just kind of given up at that point. Like, she just presumed that they were dead, and Ahsoka's like, his death was never confirmed, which means Ezra's still out there. And then, of course, Sabine having that attachment to Ezra, that was the perfect person for Ahsoka to go recruit, not only because Sabine was definitely Ahsoka's apprentice at one time, but because Sabine definitely has that connection and motivation to go find Ezra. Hu Yang was aware of Sabine's minimal Force sensitivity, which gave Sabine the assurance that she would never be a Jedi, and she returned to her Mandalorian roots. Yes. Um, I don't think that Hu Yang, who was fantastic in the show for sure, I don't think that he was saying that she would never become a Jedi. She just said he was just pointing out the fact that she didn't have any force sensitivity at all, or maybe not at all, but the least amount as any Jedi that he had ever Jedi Padawan that he had ever come across. And so, yeah, I obviously he was aware of that. But he was the one to encourage Sabine in the second episode to pick up the lightsaber and get back at it. So I don't know that Hu Yang was the reason why Sabine returned to her Mandalorian roots per se. Because I think that he was the one that encouraged her. Let's see here. My chat's frozen here a little bit. Let's see. Tony says, as for Hera, we know her as a strong yet caring mother figure. She was determined to reunite Sabine and Ahsoka and get them to work together. Yes. So I will say that Ahsoka's character felt a little bit disjointed to me. However, I think that that's going to set her up for some interesting character development. Obviously, we need to see her character go from here to here to make it a compelling story. And then Sabine as well, kind of like the whole Sabine Ahsoka thing. We're just kind of getting into it right now. I like where it's going. I'm not saying that I hate it, but I also really feel like they need to give us more information sooner rather than later. I'm fine with where we're at right now in terms of the information that we've been given, but I need more information sooner rather than later. Otherwise, it's just going to start to feel like I'm missing out on something completely. Because I already feel like that, but I'm okay with it given that it's only the second episode. Let's see here. Tony says, Hera's been through a lot in the war, and her determination was strong as she asked Sabine to accept that she would not become a Jedi, but rather embrace her heritage as a Mandalorian. That is true. That's true. Let's see here. That occurred when Sabine and Ahsoka first met after Ahsoka's trial at the Sith Temple. Not sure. I can't. Well, we've talked about so much, Tony. I'm having trouble keeping up here, but we'll get back on track here. Hera was SB says Hera was slightly off with the eyebrows, but honestly, I didn't have an issue with any Rebels characters' appearances in live action. Okay, yeah. I mean, again, Sabine was the harder character for me to get over personally. I think with time it will be okay. And kind of like what I think Tony had said earlier, it was the same way with Ahsoka at first. It's like it just takes a little bit getting used to. Honestly, probably going back and watching some Rebels and then watching Ahsoka again will help bridge that gap for me. But yeah, I wouldn't say anything was absolutely terrible. Didn't have any issues with it. It's just going to take some time to adjust. After that, Sabine and Ahsoka go to train, which, as we know, did not go well. So when you talk about the Sith Temple here, Tony, are you saying Ahsoka's trials at the Sith Temple? Are you saying the Sith Temple on Malachor? Or am I missing something? You'll have to let me know. SB says, it was curious Hera thought that, but then again, maybe that's why it's Ahsoka and Sabine and Hera isn't going with them. Let's see here. Follows up and says, let's talk about that attachment. Ezra loves her like a sister. I thought that was a huge mistake. A chance to take this out of a cartoon land and make it more real life. Yeah. So let's talk about that. It caught me off guard so I've watched both episodes twice. It did catch me off guard when Ezra says that. It was like, that's not necessarily the impression that I ever got from Ezra and Sabine. I definitely felt like it was a more romantic relationship, not a brother-sister type of thing. So it's really interesting that Dave puts that in there. I think so. Here's my argument for why it might still be okay, because I think a lot of people are taking issue with it. I mean, love is two ways, right? Maybe Ezra feels that way about Sabine, but maybe Sabine doesn't feel that way about Ezra. So it still could be possible. There's plenty of people that go from being best friends to go into a romantic relationship. And so maybe Ezra never thought that Sabine felt that way about him, and so that's how he ended up feeling about her, and that's not true. But obviously, she never got to tell him because he took a trip with the Purgle and Thrawn on the path to Peridia, as it would seem. So I don't know. I think that attachment. I think that attachment, whether it be brother, sister, or romantic, whatever, will play a big factor. And that's one of the videos. I'm trying to figure out what questions I want to make videos about. So if you have any opinions, let me know in the chat, because I need to know. I only have so much time and to make the videos. So I want to make sure that I'm answering the best question. But the video I'm leaning towards is why Ahsoka stopped training Sabine, because I think it's very clear in these episodes why Ahsoka stopped. At least on two occasions, we see Sabine in these episodes like have some, not necessarily nightmares, but some thoughts and voices in her head, people who she does feel attached to in some way, or who are at least very close to her, it would seem like. But maybe also Shin, I don't know. Either way, they're all built out of a spirit of fear, it would seem like to me. Ezra, I think Ahsoka was in there too. So maybe not necessarily people she has a strong attachment to, but definitely comes from a place of fear. And so, and Ahsoka catches on to that when she is in like the hospital room. That's the second time we see it. Ahsoka can feel it in the Force, it would seem like. And I think that is going to be what turns Ahsoka off about Sabine, and why she believes that Sabine can never be a Jedi is because she has too strong of attachments with most likely Ezra. And because of those attachments that she sees in Sabine, that's also why she does not train Grogu in The Mandalorian Season 2. I'd go more into detail in a video, but again, let me know if you'd rather see a different video. That's just the video that I'm leaning towards making right now. Let's see here. Tony says, I think this is supposed to be Sabine still needs training with a lightsaber. She doesn't need to be force sensitive to do that. Like Bo-Katan is great with the dark saber. Absolutely, for sure. And I think Hu Yang, the droid, again tells her that, yeah, you're the least. He's like, yeah, you may be the least force sensitive Jedi Padawan I've ever came across, but perhaps it's time to begin again. He doesn't tell her to stop. And so, yeah, for sure, you can be trained in the Jedi arts. We see General Grievous like that too, right? I was trained in your Jedi arts by Count Dooku. He was not force sensitive. He was a robot. So, of course, you could train in the lightsaber without being force sensitive. It probably just makes it a little bit harder. So, let's see here. Tony says, to be clear, the epilogue scene was not the one we saw last night. That's the second visit or pickup. Okay. We'll see. I'll let you know my thoughts at the end. You have to stay to the end of the stream to know my thoughts on that. Follows up and says, the first that matches the epilogue occurred before the Ahsoka show, after the events of Ahsoka endured the trials at the Sith Temple after return World Between Worlds. So you're saying that the Rebels epilogue took place before everything that we saw in the Ahsoka episodes? Interesting. I've heard some other people say that. That's interesting, though. we'll come back to that. SB says, in my opinion, season 4 of Rebels showed Ezra and Sabine on a path of being more than just co-rebels and pseudo siblings. I agree with you, but like I said, it's possible that Ezra got the hint at some point that maybe that was just never going to happen. And remember, when he's recording this, he's assuming that he's sacrificing his life. At least that was my impression. It didn't seem to me necessarily like he knew where he was going to end up. And so for all we know, he could have thought that he was sacrificing his life. And I suppose if one was about to sacrifice his life, he would want to tell somebody like Sabine that he had feelings for her, but maybe also he was just like, yeah, I was very close to you, like a sister, and didn't want to give her, didn't want to tell her that, if that makes sense, that he felt that it was more than just co-rebels or pseudo siblings because didn't want to make her more sad. I don't know, trying to make sense of it, but who knows. After the Sith trial, she becomes Ahsoka the White. So the Sith trials are you referring to the Twilight of the Apprentice episodes in Rebels? I'm not honestly sure what the Sith trials are. You'll have to let me know. Let's see. Tony follows up and says, then we see Ahsoka pick up Sabine and matching the Rebels epilogue. Note that the area is damaged where the painting is. Yes, that is true. It does look a little bit more damaged. There is a difference in the scenes for sure. Tony says, if I can get your comment to pull up, Tony. Here we go. Sabine and Ahsoka go off to train, and that did not go well. Okay. What we see last night was the second visit. It's been a while. Right. But then at the end of, so you're really saying that there's 3 visits then, because it's been a while visit happens, and that's when Sabine has long hair, and then we see them meet again at the end of the second episode, and that is more what I think is in line with what we see in the Rebels epilogue. But the question is it the same scene? And there's a lot of discourse online about that, and I'll have to let you know what I think at the end. So where were we at? I think we were talking about so we talked about Ahsoka and Sabine, the complex relationship. What did you all think about? We'll kind of skip way ahead here. What did you all think about the stab, the lightsaber stab? Again, a lot of kind of conversation on the internets about that. I don't know how I feel about the lightsaber stab. I saw it and I was like, oh, I don't know if that was the move to make. I mean, surely, if anyone was going to know that probably wasn't going to go over well with fans, it was going to be Dave Filoni. Yet, it happened anyway. Which makes me wonder if it was supposed to be, the sequence is supposed to be a little bit different, and maybe Disney didn't like it. I've also heard that theory swirling around. It's like Dave had it one way, and Disney probably said, no, she needs to be stabbed. SB, I thought you might have an opinion about this, says, I thought it was a mistake. Qui-Gon was much more powerful than Sabine, and we were already ticked at Reva surviving that. Right. So it was an interesting choice. Let's just say that. Follows up and says, that being said, I loved the Shin Sabine fight. I did too. I thought it was really good. And we know that they're going to fight again, probably in the next episode. I agree. I'll go back to your initial comment here. I agree. I think it was a mistake. It just didn't seem like a good idea to do that. And the argument is Ahsoka was right there, right? Whereas Obi-Wan was not able to tend to Qui-Gon right away. Perhaps they were farther away from any type of medical intervention. Heck, Ahsoka could have force healed her for all we know off stream. It's kind of left open for that reason. And then Tony says it's trying to explain Rey in the sequels. Probably try to explain Reva. I mean, Reva got stabbed twice. And perhaps this could put the debate. This could end the debate. I'd be curious to know what you all think about this perspective. I just kind of thought about this. So forgive me if my thinking is not, or my theory here is not well fleshed out. I mean, maybe it just comes down to the will of the Force. I hate to bring it down to just that type of line of thinking, but, to some extent, I subscribe to the theory that the Force kind of governs things in a way in the galaxy. And, I mean, without Qui-Gon, I mean, if Anakin truly was the chosen one, and fulfilled his role as the chosen one to the best of our knowledge of what that means, then Qui-Gon for sure had to die. And he had to die right then and there. Because we know that if Anakin would have trained with Qui-Gon, then we wouldn't have gotten the same Anakin Skywalker. But because Qui-Gon died, and Dave Filoni even explains this in the Mandalorian Gallery, then Obi-Wan was the one to take the place, and that's where the creation of Darth Vader really stems back to the fact that Qui-Gon was not the master. And so because Vader was always destined to be Vader, as I think we're even going to find out in a future episode of this series, Qui-Gon had to die. And apparently Reva had to live. And then Rey doesn't get stabbed, does she? It's Kylo's the one who gets stabbed, and Rey heals Kylo. But Reva gets stabbed twice. So that's the way I'm going to think about it for now. And then Sabine, obviously, now is in line. But let's just say it's the will of the Force and move on with our lives for now. If it keeps happening, then But, I mean, it is what it is, right? It is what it is. Why didn't they try to save the Admiral at the beginning? Why didn't they try to save the Admiral at the beginning? You mean the Hale? Is that what you meant, Tony? I mean, if that's what you mean, and you're talking about Shin and Baylan. I mean, Baylan tried to warn him, and he didn't listen. So that's kind of on him. Tony says, no, it's the will of Kathleen Kennedy. Also true. I'm trying to put it in perspective of what in the universe. But it is what it is. You're saying he got stabbed by a lightsaber or killed by a lightsaber. That is true. Apparently there's the correlation between male and female here, but without getting too far into the weeds on that one, let's just say it's the will of the Force for now. SB says, no, Rey is far too amazing and perfect to ever get stabbed. I can't argue with that. Cannot argue with that. I, by the way, am not a sequel fan whatsoever. I did like The Force Awakens, didn't like The Last Jedi, got my hopes up way too high for The Rise of Skywalker and was thoroughly disappointed. And so I kind of erased the sequels and the Kenobi series out of my mind, which, by the way, Journeyman, who was on the stream a few days ago, knows this. But as much as I don't like the sequels, and he knows my opinion on this, if I could choose one project to be redone and made right, if I could have the sequel project, meaning 7, 8, 9 be redone, or the Kenobi series be redone, I think we leave the sequels as is and redo Kenobi. But that's my hot take. Like, just leave the sequels, Let it be as it is. Redo Kenobi, because if anything needed Star Wars love, forget about the sequels. Kenobi needed the Star Wars love, and it didn't get it. So, not that it's ever going to happen, but if we had to redo something, can we all just agree that we should just redo the Kenobi show and make it exponentially 1,000 times better? I think we can all agree on that. Important actors get saved and unimportant people get killed. Yeah, also true. People who drive the plot forward, in a sense, have to remain alive, whereas people who need to die. That's a very logical, rational way of looking at it, Tony. But can we just stick with the will of the Force? It makes it sound cooler. Let's see here. SB, you and me see the sequel trilogy the same way. Yeah, not a fan of it. Not a fan of it. Okay, let's get into. We've talked about all of episode 1 for the most part. My rating of episode 1, drum roll please, was a surprising 9 out of 10. I really liked it. For as much as I said I didn't like in it, which I didn't even mention the Sabine motorcycle scene. I did not like that sequence at all. I had heard the rumors and the leaks about that and chose not to talk about them on stream or any video. Yeah, bad choice on there. I don't think it makes or breaks the show. Obviously, I just gave it a 9 out of 10. But also, it's one of those things where it's kind of like Reva, or also Reva, but Sabine getting stabbed. It's just not the direction I would have gone with it. It's just not needed, but it happened. So it happened. All right, episode 2. Episode 1 was a 9 out of 10. But episode 2 was good. Was good for sure. I did feel like it in some ways dragged on longer than episode 1, which again is surprising because all the critics said that episode 1 was the one that dragged on. And by the way, there was also a lot of theories that there's like some hand holding in episode 1, or some thoughts that there was some hand holding. I didn't really feel like there's a lot of hand holding. Sure, did sometimes drag on and we had to really flesh out some scenes to really get an idea of where the characters are coming from. Yes. Did I feel like it broke the show for me? Absolutely not. 9 out of 10. But episode 2, I really want to focus on the new things that we learn. So this is where we learn about the planet Cetos. That's where we go to the planet Cetos. And it was really fun to learn about apparently these ancient people who a lot of people are saying is the Rakata, who built this, like the terrace or whatever you want to call it. Let me know in the chat if it had a certain name, but I don't think it did. Just that little area where the star map could be read and kind of reveal what the path to Peridia was. Fascinating planet. Brilliant. It's just the brilliant work of Dave Filoni, right? Because it's that myth, going back to the real Star Wars thing that SB brought up. It just feels like Star Wars. It just feels like Star Wars. I think that it's exactly what Star Wars needed, and it's hard to even put into words just how excited I am to go forward. I just feel like we haven't had this type of Star Wars in a long time, so it's like kind of gives you a little bit of a shock when you start to get things like this. It's just so fascinating. And what's so cool about it is you can't even really theorize it all about it all that much, because a lot of times the things that get brought into canon are an adaptation from legends. And so you can kind of theorize and speculate and kind of draw some conclusions and be like, oh yeah, this is kind of seems familiar. They did something similar in here or over here. When this is brand new. To my knowledge, this so-called path to Peridia, this literally new galaxy in Star Wars. I mean, how cool is that? We're talking about future conflicts in Star Wars, um, leading up to the events before The Force Awakens, and then even after the sequel trilogy, post sequel trilogy content. We could be talking about wars between different galaxies. That is what makes the most sense for Star Wars moving forward. We can all only stay in our galaxy so long. There can only be Sith and Jedi for so long, light side, dark side. And yes, while we might continue to see the light side and the dark side in terms of the Force in different galaxies, we might see different variations of how the Force is wielded, which I think we'll see. We've talked about that a little bit, everything we know. But just a fantastic idea, and I'm so excited for the direction that we're going there. And to hear, like, yes, we haven't, as the audience, had anything like this in Legends, again, that I'm aware of. It sounds like this is not necessarily unknown to everybody. Of course, um, like the Night Sisters know about it because we hear Morgan Elsbeth explaining to Balin and Shin what it is. But even Balin says, yeah, like we heard about this as in the Jedi Temple. As a young kid, he heard about this, but he thought it was a legend. And Elsbeth is like, there's some truth here to this, obviously, because they're witnessing it right before their eyes. So just really, really cool stuff. Even the Inquisitor, right? Like the Merrick, who is referred to as he, but I'm still wondering if it's not a she, and maybe just Balin and Shin don't know. Um, the Inquisitor is a really fascinating character. It's really cool. Like I wasn't sure how it was gonna play out in the trailers. It seemed like almost Merrick, the Inquisitor, was different from, or had different motivations, or was just all around different from Balin and Shin. But they're kind of a trio. There it is master and apprentice between Balin and Shin, but they seemingly are a trio. And Merrick listens to Balin. So they kind of got like yeah, it's really interesting. It's really interesting. It almost makes me wonder if like this is kind of where the Knights of Ren, which I think they have a backstory of their own, so I could be totally wrong here, but I don't know. It just they kind of give off this. It's kind of like everything maybe we wanted the Knights of Ren to actually be. Not that they had to have lightsabers, but they just seem like compelling villains. So, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. But yeah, super excited. All of the Cetos, Path to Peridia, like all that new mythology seems really, really cool. So, um, SB says, I didn't like how they made Sabine seem like a punk, but she seemed to get contrite after losing the map. Yeah, I didn't like how they really portrayed her. I felt like some of it was kind of unnecessary, but here we are. It was like, I gave it a 9 out of 10, so can't really complain all that much. Tony says Sabine motorcycle scene was too long, but it needed to make a point that she doesn't care anymore and set up her return to the Sabine we knew. Yeah, and I've seen a lot of people make the argument of like the scene which we got Ryder Azadi, which was really cool, nice little cameo and callback to Rebels. That scene where he's introducing Sabine and she's not there, some people were saying like that was enough. That could have satisfied to show that Sabine was a rebel, and we could just cut to her going to the tower, and the motorcycle scene wasn't needed. I kind of agree with that. Honestly, the scene itself probably wouldn't have been as bad to me if we just hadn't had the rock music. It just that kind of took me out of the Star Wars galaxy with the music. I know some people like it. It's just wasn't for me. Didn't really love that. SB says, I don't think it's the Rakata. I think they're going for Jedi Fallen Order Ancients, the Zepho. I haven't played surprisingly, the Fallen Order or Jedi Survivor video games, so I am not up to speed on all things Zepho. But I know that a lot of people like the Zepho and want the Zepho to appear in Star Wars projects. So I would be fine with that too. Yeah, I've heard the Ricotta, and I have heard that it could be the Zepho too. I'd be fine with either one. Honestly, I think it's just cool either way. Tony says, I gave episode 2 a 10 as it provided some plot twists that I was not aware. The universe beyond, character reveals, etc. Fair. Also follows up and says the Purgle connections. Yeah, when Balin looks up and sees the Purgle, fantastic. Just fantastic. Senator Tony also says episode 2 got me excited for episode 3 instead of oh well another Kenobi, Ahsoka rocks. Yes. I would agree. I think this is completely different than Kenobi. I felt no need at all to go back and watch Kenobi after those episodes aired, but I did go back and watch the Ahsoka series, the 2 episodes again. That was my test for it. I tried not to get my expectations too high. I told myself if the way I'm going to gauge if this is good and this is what I think Star Wars should be is if I feel immediately compelled to go rewatch the episodes. And immediately after I finished the second episode, I turned on some people I wanted to hear their reactions from, and then I went back and watched them over. So it's kind of a long night, but it was satisfying. So I had to go watch again. Tony says, SB, oh, that's a good theory, referring to the Zepho. It is a good theory. SB says, I give episode 2 a 9. I thought both episodes were good, and I hope fans eventually get on board. I have a feeling people may find this series more appealing as a binge. Honestly, I think that's probably true for any series, honestly, but I know what you're saying. I will say that this does feel more in line with the Mando season 2. Every week of the Mando season 2, I found myself speculating and theorizing what could happen next, and that's definitely how I feel about this show. So super excited for that. And I'm glad you thought it was a 9. And see, you had me thinking that you're going to rate it a lot lower, SB, but I'm glad that you enjoyed it. So I think you liked it more than you think you did. Let's just put it that way. Senator Tony says, I would love to see Marin from Jedi Fallen Order come back to kill Morgan for being a bad person. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Maybe we'll see. We'll see. Again, I haven't played those video games, so I don't even know if Marin survived. But we shall see, I guess. So yeah, there were just, again, episode 2 was fantastic. The Eye of Sion as well. Building that... what do you call it? I mean, obviously the hyperdrives, like the big ship, is really what it is. We know that obviously they succeed in getting to Peridia because we see Thrawn on that ship, and so we know that they're successful at one point in getting there. It'd be really interesting to see. The rumors are we'll get a time jump between episode 4 or around episode 5, which leads me to my theory is that, so here's my thoughts on the whole Rebels epilogue scene thing. Let's get a drink for this one. I don't think that was the epilogue scene. I don't. Number one, they were different, and you say, well, maybe Dave retconned it. Sure. We didn't see Ahsoka the White. We didn't see the white robes. Yes, which I am sad about. There were similar expressions, the same camera angles, the same cuts. Sabine touches Ezra's face, but there are some differences, most notably the white robes. How also Sabine does not put her helmet on. When she turns around to see Ahsoka in the animated version in Rebels, we see Sabine take the helmet and put the helmet on. We don't see that in the live action shot. So while you could argue I feel like if Dave was truly going to retcon the white robes, he would get everything else right. It only makes sense that he would get everything else right, especially something as minor as a helmet. And the staff was missing too, Tony. I saw that in the comments. But yeah, so the robes and the staff were missing. But if you're going to make it the same scene, why not have Sabine put on the helmet? And you could say, well, it's because she goes up and talks to Ahsoka, but okay, the whole Mandalorian show is literally a guy in a Mandalorian helmet talking. So don't tell me that that's not possible. So I don't know. At first, I was bummed because I thought, okay, they did retcon it. It's fine. We kind of expected this. But then I thought, oh, but there are some minor differences here that would lead me to think that this is not the same scene. Now, I don't know why there would be two scenes that are exactly similar with the other scene that I think might happen later on in the show, the Ahsoka in her white robes with Sabine also putting on the helmet. Don't know why they would be almost similar, other than maybe Dave is just trying to mislead us. I haven't seen a lot of videos or anything made on it, but a lot of speculation, and a lot of people that I watch and trust are also with me in thinking that this is certain. And these are people who don't necessarily care about Ahsoka the White. I care a lot about Ahsoka the White. I think that we are in for a treat later on in the season. Rosario Dawson herself has teased the fact that Ahsoka goes from gray to white. Whether that means she's in white robes, if holding a staff, it doesn't matter. The point is we're going to see Ahsoka transform into something. I don't really necessarily care to see it in the same way that we see it in Rebels, other than the continuity. I'm a big sucker for continuity and just keeping everything the same. But again, if you would think that if the only thing they were going to change was Ahsoka's appearance, why not just have Sabine put the helmet on, call it a day? But it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. Tony says, I agree. What we don't agree is the timing of them. Fair enough, Tony. Fair enough. So I'm glad we're on the same page that at least it wasn't the same. It was the second meetup, I guess, in your opinion. My question is wouldn't you agree that if Ahsoka the White was truly a possibility, and so it sounds like what you're saying is Ahsoka the White comes with her staff and white robes to pick up Sabine for the first time. Why would she still not be that way? Because the impression that I think you would agree with, and I think, is that Ahsoka the White is more powerful than the Ahsoka that's portrayed right now. If that person was more powerful, obviously we would expect for her to keep that power and maintain that power, which is why I don't think it would have happened before the show. I think it's going to happen later on in the show. And I think that is going to be the point at which we see Ahsoka and Sabine get ready to go to Peridia. And yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We'll have to see. But I'm hoping that we get to see Ahsoka the White at some point. So, all right. For episode 2, I gave it an 8 out of 10. Yes, I like the first episode better. 9 out of 10 for the first episode, and then a 8 out of 10 for the second episode, which gives a overall ranking of 8.5 out of 10. So, not bad at all. I was very pleased with the episodes, and I'm really looking forward to next week. So, Tony says, that's okay with me. That's fair. We can agree to disagree, Senator. That's what Star Wars democracy is all about. Okay, let's do a quick I Love Democracy segment.
I love democracy. I love the Republic.
Of course, for the segment tonight, I Love Democracy, we're going to be talking about people's ratings for episodes 1, which is titled Master and Apprentice, and episode 2, Toil and Trouble. So if you don't know, I post a lot of polls on our community tab here on the channel. And the Senate has voted. just as Tony has said here, the senators have voted. Haven't got a lot of votes just because I did post it last night, really late. So it's only been able to vote for about 24 hours here. But at 63%, 63% of senators here on the channel gave both episodes 1 and 2 combined 5 stars, which I think is absolutely fantastic. That means approximately a little under 2/3 of people who voted here on the channel thought that Ahsoka was 5 stars. 31%, a little under a third, gave it 4 stars, and then 6% gave 3 stars. We didn't have any people vote 1 star, 2 star. So overall, I think we're in fantastic shape for the Ahsoka show. Couldn't be more happy with the 2 episodes that we got. It's just the first 2 episodes. How much better could they have been? And I think it's only going to get better from there. So, let's see. Senator SB says, it's nice to see a fan base that actually enjoys the series. Yeah, it's really, really great to see that people on this channel and just in general have appreciation for the series. It'll be really, really fun to go from here all the way to the finale and speculate about what's going to happen. So keep coming back every week. The next live stream we're going to do is on Monday. We'll give our predictions for episode 3, and then we'll come back here next Wednesday to give our reactions. So can't wait for next week. I can't wait either, SB. It'll be really fun. Make sure, remember, senators of the channel, go to that community tab closer to probably this weekend, and give your thoughts as senators of the channel on the community tab. Fill out the Google Forms, and I will read your predictions on the stream next Monday. Monday at 9, SB says. So it'll be 9 o'clock Eastern, but I'm in the Central time zone, so it'll be 8 p.m. Central here. So same time as tonight and last on Monday. It'll be 8 p.m. Central. Look forward to seeing you all there. Make sure you fill out that Google Form document, and be on the lookout. If you have Discord, make sure that you go. I'm going to put the link to the Discord. I forgot to do it, but I'm going to put the link to our Discord in the description here. Also follow me on Twitter at SWDemocracy. You can direct message me. I'll send you the Discord link there. Would love to continue the conversation in our Discord. We don't have a lot of people there yet, but people like Senator Tony, who says, do your homework. We'll be there. Tony has a lot of great things that he posts of other creators. Would love to support other creators and like to showcase their work on my Discord as well. But would love to continue the conversation. So SB, you have a Discord, hop on. And anybody else who's rewatching this, look in the description of this live stream and continue the conversation on the Discord. I think that's all the updates I wanted to give. I think with that, we're going to adjourn to end the stream here tonight. I appreciate all of you senators for being here. May the force be with you always.